Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. The training lasts roughly an hour and a half to an hour 45. Kind of depends on load times and or if I make a mistake and have to backtrack. We do record these trainings, so you can always come back and view the whole training later, or if you have to leave, you can always come back and view the rest of it. Feel free to make use of YouTube's chat feature to ask questions about a feature as I'm going over it. And if I miss it initially, I'll try to circle back to answer the question as I see them. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Here you see my Dash login page. You can get there by going to dash.virtualpbx.com. To log in, we need 3 pieces of information. The first is your email address, followed by your password, and then the account name, which is typically your company name or organization name. Now, if you don't remember or you didn't get the email with your information, down here at the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, click on the Forgot Your Info link. We still need your email address. Main thing about the email address on this form, make sure it's all in lowercase. Even on the previous login page, make sure it's all in lowercase. And then we need either, again, the account name or a phone number that's on the account. Right? That's a phone number your customers call to get into your system. So one of those 2 pieces. Click on the reset password bar here at the bottom. The system will send you an email. It's going to have a link that lets you get into your system via your account page specifically, where you can change your password. Once you change your password, it will log you out. In fact, if you try to navigate away from that account page, the system will log you back out here. Come in, again, put your email address, your password, the account name. You have the option here to click on Remember Me, and then click on this sign in bar. Now, I'm using a test account that I log into on a regular basis, so the system will take me right to my dashboard page. If it's your first time logging in, the system will actually take you to your user account page, right? And the Dash Wizard pop-ups will start showing up. Now, you can always get back to your user account page by clicking on your name at the top, towards the top right. So I'll click there now. And you see here my user account page. Most common thing that's changed is the password, right? So like if you just signed up with us, the system generates a password for you. It's going to be something completely random, probably not easy to remember. So that's why you might want to come here and change it to something you can remember. Now, as an admin, you also have access to the account level settings over here on the left. The main thing that's changed is the time zone, possibly the display language, right? So how the web pages, what language did the web pages here show up as? If you by chance need to change the account name, you actually need to contact our billing team because there's several things they need to change on their side to make sure everything syncs up properly. You can just email them at billing@virtualpbx.com. Once you're done on these pages and you're done with the account wizard or the Dash Wizard, over here towards the top right, there's a little close box. You just click on that, and now you'll be back on the dashboard page. Again, that first time logging in, Dash Wizard pop-ups will be showing up, telling you what certain things are. The Dash Wizard will also come up on the users page and the groups page, which we'll be getting to those shortly. All right, so these top bar on the top here, where it says VirtualPBX and it has your name, right? That bar is always going to be here, so you can always navigate to these things. So clicking on your name, you can always get back to your account page. For many of you, to the right of your name, you'll have a D&D toggle for Do Not Disturb. If you tap on that, it will be activated and basically be mostly white, and that means you're not accepting calls, right? So calls to you will go to voicemail, or you'll be skipped depending on what other features you're making use of. The reason I don't have it next to my name here is because I'm part of an ACD queue. All right, once I was assigned to the the call center queues. So once I was assigned to the call center in general, that D&D toggle was removed from my user because those 2 features do not work well together. Then you see here, I have a little phone icon here. This shows up because I have added a web phone device to my user. The web phone makes use of Chrome or Firefox on a computer. Just lets you use that browser via your internet connection to make and receive calls. Right? If I did not have that as a device on my user, this little icon would not be here. Then to the right here, I've got the little graduation icon, or graduation cap icon, I should say. This opens up a new tab, takes you right to our support pages. So you can see guides about our various features. Then I've got the little chat bubble icon here. That will open up the chat window so you can chat with a support team member so they can help you with whatever feature or device you're working with. Then we got the 3 horizontal line icon here. That is the menu icon, which takes you to other dash features. Now, we will predominantly be here on the dashboard. That will take the majority of our training time here, but we will touch on these other areas. Some of them are plan specific, meaning that they're only available on some plans and not all plans. So it's possible that these features may not show up on your page. Speaking of plans, I believe we just released new plans today. So if you go to our pricing page, might be quite a bit different than what you saw yesterday. So just be aware of that. Then we have a little arrowed icon to the right. That's your logout button. Right here in the center, we have my total users. I have 24. That means I have 24 people on my account who are making and receiving calls. Right. Most of our plans are built on a per user basis, so I'm paying for each of these people. Right. The more I add, the higher my bill. Down below, I have total devices, showing that I have 43 total devices spread around most likely all of my users. And there's little breakdowns here. Now, Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind, but we can route calls to cell phones or landlines. Just bear in mind that when a call ends up at a cell phone or a landline, right, that's the endpoint, right? That from that device, you're not going to be able to transfer calls from your cell phone to another user. It's one of the advantages of using VoIP. Now, here, first up, we got SoftPhone. This is a software application that uses your network connection to make and receive calls. This includes the VirtualPBX softphone. This includes third-party softphones, right? You're using someone else's app other than ours, which is completely fine. Then I've got cell phones, right? Means you just added a cell phone number to your account, and it's, again, an endpoint in the system. Web phone, that's that Chrome or Firefox device. I should point out for the web phone, it only works on the computer or desktop version of those applications. Mobile versions are not supported. SIP phone, this is a piece of hardware. It's a physical device, right? So a phone sitting on your desk. This can be Yealink phones, Cisco, Polycom, etc. So VoIP is a general term, right? Covers a wide variety of devices and manufacturers. SIP is a particular subtype, right? So there can be many kinds of VoIP phones on the market. So you just want to make sure that when you're shopping that you're looking for a SIP device. That's SIP, like a sip of water. Now, I have a couple here that are listed as unregistered. That's 2. Those are phones that I've deactivated, right? I've disabled on my system. Now, I can always choose to reactivate them at any time, but for whatever reasons right now, I have disabled them. Then down here, I have total numbers, 39. These are phone numbers on my account. Now, as part of your monthly plan price, you get a certain number of phone numbers as part of your plan. This, 39 is actually quite a fairly significant amount of phone numbers. So it's very possible that I am paying extra for these phone numbers. That would be on our pricing page if you click on the detailed information. That would give you an idea of what you're paying and how many phone numbers you get. If you're on an older plan and you want to know how many phone numbers you get and or what overages are involved, you actually would need to talk to our account services team. Down here, I have a breakdown here of assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned numbers, I'm using it, right? Someone can dial that number and expect to reach somebody, right? Leave a voicemail, join a conference, send a fax. Spare numbers, right? They count towards your allotment, but you're not using them, right? That could be you're about to expand into a new market, or um, you know took a number out of service because like you had a promotion end, right? Now, once you unassign a number, that's how it becomes a spare number, and that just means you haven't removed it from your account. Right, spare number. Uh, Again, you're not using it for whatever reasons. Sorry, I think I'm repeating myself there. Then we have another breakdown here: USDID and US toll free. US toll free, actually US Canada toll free, right? That's a 1-800 number. 888-833, all the way, or, and everything in between. USDID, that just means a US local phone number, right? So a number in San Jose, California, and a number in, say, Elmira, New York, both USDIDs. You can have international phone numbers on your account. If you're so interested, you need to email our porting team, and that's PORTING at virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. And that information, I mean, so in terms of what's available, right, that depends on the country. Some of them have additional requirements, and then that's purely up to that jurisdiction. Conference bridges, I have 8. That means I've enabled the conference bridge feature on 8 of my users. Over here towards the top right, just we have my main number box. So I have 6 numbers listed here. So these 6 numbers all behave in the same fashion. They're all going to the same location. They're all going to play the same ingredient, for instance. Then I have my conference number. This is the number everyone dials to join a conference, right? That includes my staff members, my clients, my vendors. You can have multiple conference room number if you want, but they're all going to the same set of conference rooms. Fax box number, you can have the one main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. And it allows you to adjust your fax box so that you can also send out faxes. All right, the company directory right here, there's 2 download links. One is CSV and one is softphone. The CSV just downloads a CSV file, a spreadsheet file. Basically has a list of everyone's names, their extension numbers, and their primary devices. So if you like people who like having that kind of documentation there, that's an option. The softphone download is specifically for use with the VirtualPBX desktop softphone application. So if you're using our softphone app on, say, a Windows PC or Mac OS, you can then download this file, upload it to our softphone app on your computer, and that will allow you to see the status or the presence of the other staff members on your account. Now, this only shows the status of their soft phones, right? So if you're all using VirtualPBX soft phones, you can all see their status. And if you have multiple types of phones in use, then you're not going to see the status of those other devices. VirtualPBX Store, this link here opens a new tab, takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, and this is where you would go to purchase a VoIP phone from us, or a router, or any number of other things that are there. And then we have the account realm. Each account has its own account realm. This is used in a couple of different things. The first or most common is for a third-party soft phone. There's 3 pieces of information that we give you. The account realm is one of those that you would then use to program or provision that third-party soft phone, right, to allow you to use it on the system. The other thing it's used for is to send a fax out. When you send a fax out, you actually don't have to log into your Dash account. You just have to create an email, basically use the email address that's associated with your user, generally speaking. You create an email like you normally do. Right? You in the to field though, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number you are faxing to, and then you had put the @ symbol and put in your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or a TIFF file, and then you would click send. Right, up here towards the top, right between my name here and my main company numbers, click on that button here. That's the company caller ID. So this pull down here, which unfortunately doesn't display well on my streaming software, shows all your main numbers, right? So these 6 numbers over here under my main number box, I can choose any one of these numbers, and whichever number I select becomes my default number, right? So like whenever my VoIP phones make an outbound call, by default, they will show this phone number, this 408 number, as my outbound caller ID, right? And this phone number becomes default for a couple other features as well. Then you have the optional feature here for enter your company caller ID name. This is referred to as the CNAME feature. In this box here to the right, you can enter in 15 characters, and it counts spaces and special characters as well, that we then associate with your phone number. Basically, we send it out as part of your caller ID. A couple things to keep in mind about the company caller ID feature is that not every carrier supports it. So when you make an outbound call, no matter what device you use, whether it's your actual cell phone or with us, right, your phone call routes through several different carriers before it reaches its destination. If any one of those carriers does not support CNAM, your CNAM information does not make it to your destination. Now, even probably more relevant than any of that is the receiving network, right? Whatever carrier is receiving that call for your destination, they get final say on what goes through and what shows up on the phones on their network. So you make a call out to a phone number, say in New York, right? That New York phone number, that carrier says, oh, you're sending us the caller ID, the number, and the name. Okay, that's cool. We'll pass that through, right? So then your name and information shows up. Or they can say, oh, you're sending us this information. No, we'll look up the number under our own set of databases that we use, and we'll put that information instead. Or they can even say, we're not going to send any CNAME information instead. We're just sending the number. So, and that last scenario is most common among cell phone carriers. My cell phone carrier, for instance, wants to charge me $10 a month in order to have the company name information show up on all calls that come to my cell phone. I'm not willing to pay that, so I just deal with it. And I'm guessing a lot of people are that way. At least a couple of the other carriers that I've looked into have also had some sort of charge associated with that feature. All right, down here we have the company emergency information, or E911. This is the system wanting a North American address, so that way from your VoIP phones, right, if someone picks up, dials 911, this becomes the default address that is sent to emergency services. Now, each of your phone numbers can have its individual E911 information, which then allows you to assign that to your various phone numbers or your various VoIP devices. So each VoIP device could have a different E911 address, which would be relevant for staff working remotely, right? So that way, if they dial 911 from when they're working from home, you want to make sure that you have their home address there versus your company headquarter address. So any changes you make between changing the phone number, if you opt to use the company caller ID name, or adding the E911 address, click on Save Changes. Now, for the E911, or not the E911, sorry, for the company name, if you choose something there and click on Save Changes, it does take time for the other carriers to update their information, their databases, basically. And that's roughly 3 business days. All right, then we have the Hold Music button here. The Dash allows you to upload your own media files. It will play back .wav and .mp3 files. You want to make sure that the file is less than 1 megabyte, and to help with that, you would want to record in mono, because that will save you space. But you would upload the file, right? Click on the Browse button here to find the file on your computer or device. Click the little up arrow icon, and then click on Save Changes. And that would become the default hold music for your entire staff. Now, in terms of how the Dash handles hold music, this is defined on the system basically as after a call has come in, reached the user, right? The user has picked up, and then they, after speaking to their inbound caller, they press hold on their VoIP phone. That's when this media file will play. Now, hours is part of main number, which we'll get to shortly. I want to cover users and groups first, just because those are relevant towards your menu options under main number. So let's skip down to users. Again, the Dash wizard is going to pop up when you're on this page. But this shows all your users on your account. The people with the little blue suit icon, these are your system admins, right? So they can do all the things we're talking about. The gray people icon, that's just your standard users who have very limited access. Like they can basically check their voicemail and like check their settings, but they're not going to be able to add users, phone numbers, or anything of that nature. Up here at the top, you click on Add User, and you fill out the form, right? First name, last name, pretty easy. The email address used for login, that needs to be unique for each user, right? So you can't reuse an email address among multiple staff members. The email address used for login is how the system communicates with your users. Right, so that's what the system uses to send voicemail notifications or password resets, that sort of thing. Then you have the password box here. That's for you to create a password for the user. And then the main extension number. This becomes their default extension number for most people. That's the only extension number they need. You can type in anything you want here. This system started off with extension 1000. So the system is being helpful by saying, hey, the next available in that series is 1017. I can say, nope, I want this person to be part of my 5000 series if I want to. By default, the system will create a voicemail box for this user at the same time that you create the user. This means this voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. So for instance, if you finish creating the user and you add the VoIP phone to them, the VoIP phone gets registered, they can pick up that phone, dial *98 from their phone and click send. The system will then log them into their voicemail box automatically, walk them through setting up their voicemail box PIN number and their voicemail box greeting, right? So basically they get all set up. Include in the company directory, you'll just put a check mark here. This will include them in the Smart PBX directory or the user directory. You can always change this later. Here you have send emails to an alternate address. So if you want the password reset emails or the voicemail notification emails to go to a different email address than the one you have stated here for the email used for login, you would put a check mark here and then put that different email address in this box here. And then lastly, send credentials to the user, put a check mark here. And once you click on create user or create user and add another, right, any of these bottom buttons, the system will obviously create the user, but then send them an email welcoming them to the Dash account and giving them their login information. All right, create user and add another is if you're adding multiple people. All right, once a user is created, you can always come back here and click on their name. Right, so here you can change their name in case someone does a name change or you want to reuse an extension number. Here's your option to change their credentials. If you click on that, so you can change their email address and their password. You can also send the password reset email right here. Here is where you can change their voicemail box PIN number. Just enter a 4-digit code and then enter save changes. Here's the option to send to an alternate email address. And here's the option for being in the company directory or not. Now here, over here to the right, this little person icon, this is where you change a user into an admin or an admin into a user, the pull down. Little time icon here, this lets you change the time zone for the user, right? So that way their voicemail timestamps are correct for their time zone. The ringing timeout by default is 20 seconds. On this case, it's grayed out on this user because they have a user feature enabled called Follow Me. Next up, we have the extension box for the user. You can add additional extensions to a user if you want to. You have a phone number box for the user. So users can have their own individual phone numbers, right? So a number that goes directly to them. This phone number is available 24/7, right? There's no way to put hours of operation on a user. And then we have the device box for the user, right? You can click on it to see their available devices. You can either add from spare, meaning you're reusing device, or you can click on new device to add a new device. I typically find it easier to add devices directly to a user. And I'm just gonna click on this one to delete it. And mostly because in general, for a device to receive a call, it's almost always easier to have it associated with a person versus being on its own. Now to add a new device, you select the device type. So for instance, SIP phone. Again, this is that physical device, right? Sits on someone's desk. You have these manufacturers to choose from, right? Some like Yealink have a lot of phone models to choose from. Others like Obohai only have a few. But you just need to find the make and model of the phone you're working with. Then you need to give it a name, right? Like Bob's phone, right? Or warehouse phone. And then we need the MAC address. The MAC address is unique to each device, usually a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, you can also find it typically under that status or basic settings, one of those two areas typically. You just enter that number here, and then you click on create device. Now, once a device is created, right, it's automatically added to the user, so that saves you a step in a sense. And I'll go here to Bob here. Once it's added, the next step within our dashboard that you have to do, right? Click on the device, go to advanced, go to miscellaneous, and then where here it says where allow reprovision, you click unlock, and you click save changes, and then you click save changes here. Also, after you click on create device, you'll come back to the user's device box, right? You would click save changes here as well. Now, in terms of our dashboard, that's all you need to do. However, you're not done with the phone. You need to log into that phone's web user interface, get to its auto provisioning area. You need to at least enter a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, go to this URL, get your config file. Right? The phone will do that once it's connected to the internet. Grab its config file, reboot a couple times, and then show up as a green device. For the specifics of that, you're going to want to go to our support pages, right? So click on the little graduation cap icon here and do a search for auto provisioning. That will take you to the auto provisioning document. It's going to have screenshots from these various manufacturers, the proper syntax for that URL, and in some cases, some settings to double check. It gets a little bit complicated to show them all on the training, so that's why I refer to the document there. And actually, hold on just a second. I'll be right back. Sorry about this. All right. Next up, you can add cell phones or landlines to devices or to users. All right, new device, click on cell phone. You need to still give it a name. Right? I usually say, again, person's name or location, what have you, or role. Right? And then in the number field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number, no spaces, no dashes, no parentheses. Right? So just +1 area code and number. And then you click on create device and then save changes. Now, we'll go up here to Aaron because he has a demo device here, which is a cell phone. Right? So this is how it should look. Right? So name, +1 area code and number. If we go to the advanced options, oops, that is now the default setup for a cell phone or landline on the system. So as I mentioned before, right, a call that ends up at a cell phone or landline, right, that's the last point. Right? It can't be transferred on to another extension or user group, etc. When a call is offered to a cell phone or landline, right, the phone will ring. When you pick up, you're going to hear a message from the system saying, "This is a forwarded call. Please press 1." When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take the call. It then connects that inbound caller to you so you can then speak to that person. Now, that's great if you're actually offering calls to a person. Let's say, for instance, you have contracted with an automated answering service to answer your calls for after-hours purposes, for instance. So they give you a phone number and say, hey, just send your calls to this phone number. We'll handle the calls that come in. Well, you would then add that phone number as either cell phone or landline on your dash system. However, you need to adjust these settings, right? Because that automated answering service doesn't know when to press 1. In fact, it probably doesn't have a capability of doing so. At least I haven't encountered one that can. So what you would want to do is right here where it says allow use of cell phone's voicemail, put a little check mark in front of that, click on save changes. So now when we send a phone call to this phone number, instead of the system saying this is a forwarded call, please press 1, we don't say anything. Right? We just we ring to that phone number, they pick up. Right? We hear that pickup tone, we connect the call. Right? Great for automated answering service because then they can handle the call. If this is let's say this is coming to me, this is my actual cell phone number, I had that box checked, what could happen is if I'm not able to pick up the call, right? Rings my cell phone voicemail picks up. That inbound caller ends up on my personal cell phone's voicemail. Right? Some people want that, some people don't. It's just that becomes optional at that point. Keep original caller ID. This is by default checked, and what this means is when, let's say, customer Mary calls into the system on my cell phone, right? I see the caller ID and it says has customer Mary's phone number. If I don't recognize it or I've had too many robo-dialers, telemarketers, what have you, maybe I let it go to voicemail. Then maybe I able to reconnect with customer Mary, maybe not. If I uncheck this, right, click save and save changes, now instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, I see my main company number show up on my cell phone. And what do we mean by that? If we go back to that dashboard page, right, this phone number is what shows up on my cell phone's display. So now, hopefully, I would recognize my company number and I would pick up that call, because that would most likely be worthwhile. Oops, wrong tab. All right, next kind of device is the soft phone. So first, there's this warning message whenever you add a soft phone or web phone. So something you should make sure you to read at least once. Once you click close, you'll get this big box. Now, by default, you're being shown here what's called a third-party soft phone, meaning you're going to use someone else's soft phone app, right? Not a VirtualPBX soft phone. If you want to use our app, right? So if you're going to use a VirtualPBX soft phone, down here towards the bottom, it says use third-party application. It's grayed out, a little hard to see, right? It's just below where it says this view configuration guide. Click on that. So now it flips it to say use VirtualPBX application, right? Give it a name, Bob's soft phone, for example. Click on create device, then click on save changes. Once you click on save changes, the user gets an email saying that their VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It has the login information to use with the soft phone, as well as download links. So a new user at this point, right, they would have an email welcoming them to Dash with Dash login information, and then they could have a second email saying that their soft phone is ready with that set of login information. They're going to be completely different. The web phone, again, you want to add a web phone directly to a user, and that's because once you give it a name, right, click on Create Device, and then click on Save Changes. One, they get the little web icon up here, web phone icon up there, but they can also just go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, excuse me, on either Chrome or Firefox. The web phone uses their Dash login, right? So same email address, same password, same account name, and now they can use the web phone to make and receive calls. But it does need to be associated with a user in order to have that information to be able to work. All right, so now we have user features. First up, caller ID number. This only will work with users that have their own phone number. You would click up here to enable. You select the phone number on the user, right? So if they only have the one number, that's easy. If they have multiple, you have to choose one. You click on Save Changes. And what this does is now when Aaron makes an outbound call from his VoIP phones, his outbound caller ID becomes his 323 phone number, right? Not the main 408 number. So for instance, 323 is in Southern California. So he's like one of my Southern California sales reps, and he's, in charge or responsible for Southern California. It would make sense for him to have, or it might make sense to have a local phone number as he's calling people in that area. Virtual text. Now, this feature may not be enabled on your account right off the bat, like if you just signed up with us. Typically, you need to speak to our account services team. But when you turn it on, right, so you click to enable, you select a phone number on the account. This would be one of your main phone numbers. This would be an auto-attendant phone number or a phone number assigned to a user. And then you click, save? Right, save changes. You click on Save Changes. They will then get an email welcoming them to virtual text. Has its own login information, right? Now, potentially, your user has 3 emails with 3 sets of login information that are all completely different from each other. So virtual text, you can download the virtual text app to either your Android or iOS, right, or iPhone, or you can go on our web browser, go to virtualtext.app, right, for app, log in there. This allows you to text customers from your phone numbers. The main advantage of virtual text is to share a phone number among staff members. So like for your main numbers, you can share them among your staff, so that way you have multiple people able to interact with customers via text. There is now an SMS registration process for this. This is coming down from the industry. And that's actually up here under the menu icon if you want to get into that. We'll touch on that later. Voicemail box. Now, if you just signed up with us and you're the only user on the account, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, you want to assign an extension number to your user, right? By default, that first user does not come with an extension number assigned because we want to give you the opportunity to decide your extension number or extension numbering system, right? In terms of, do you want to start with extension 1000? Maybe you want to start with extension 5000, what have you. Or maybe you just want single digit extensions, so 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But you do need to assign yourself an extension number before you can enable the voicemail box feature, because the voicemail box will match the voicemail box number to your extension number, right? But once you've done that, then you can enable it. I really should double check if transcription is a plan specific feature still, but basically transcription is the system. Okay, well, let me backtrack a little bit. For voicemail, by default, the system emails you whenever you get a voicemail, right? And the body of the email has the date, the time, the phone numbers involved, and but also by default, it has an MP3 attachment, so you can listen to the voicemail. Transcription is when the system listens to the voicemail and types out what it hears in the body of the email notification. Now, the system does this to the best of its ability, right? So if people are not speaking into the microphone, or the microphone picks up lots of background noise, that's going to negatively impact the quality of that transcription. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. Now, by default, right, this kind of setup here, your staff members have 3 ways to listen to the voicemail messages, right? The email notification, right, the MP3. They can call in, right? So if you have your main number set to the virtual receptionist, which we'll be getting to shortly, when they hear the main greeting, they can hit *97. The system will ask them for their voicemail box number and PIN number. Right? Technically, actually, there's a 4th way, right? If they have a VoIP phone, they just pick up the phone, hit *98. That logs them into their voicemail box directly. And the last method is to log into the web page, right? So go to dash.virtualpbx.com. And for your standard users, they'll be directed right to their user portal, which sends them to their voicemail tab, right? So they can listen to their message directly from the web page. Now, when you call in or use the user portal, you have the ability to delete messages, right? You can also download them on the user portal as well. All right, but the main thing is you can delete messages, so that way your voicemail box doesn't get full. If you have a person who isn't good about deleting messages, or maybe you just have a voicemail box that gets so many messages that it's not feasible for people to get in there regularly to delete messages, then you have this option here, which is delete the messages from the system after that notification is sent, right? So call comes in, someone leaves a message, email is sent, and then the system deletes the message from the system, right? So that means for that voicemail box, or this user's voicemail box, they can only ever check their voicemails via email, right? So if they have a problem with their email, or they're not getting emails from us, then they might lose voicemail messages. All right, follow me. This is for users with multiple devices. This allows you as an admin to control what devices ring and in what order and for how long. So let's actually, so when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? It says, hey, what devices do you want to use? Now, when you uncheck them, it starts off like this, right? 0 seconds. No, that's not a very long ring time. So what you would do is click on this little green bar here and drag to the right. So now that's how much time we're going to send calls to this device. Now in this case, right, the system remembered my previous setup here. Along the top here, these are timestamps. So the default is 120 seconds. Right? I can change that. Saying, now that's a long time to wait for somebody. So now it just said, hey, wait, everything at the maximum is 60 seconds. So that's what these first and third ones do. And that middle one doesn't even get a chance to ring. So what I can do is click distribute here. So now it equalized the ringing time of 60 seconds among my 3 devices, right? So offering it for about 20 seconds each. 20 seconds, plenty of time for a landline or even a VoIP phone. 20 seconds may not be enough time to send calls to a cell phone. It simply takes longer to send a call to a cell phone than it does to, say, a landline. Right? Right? Call comes out, basically you call a landline number, right? Gets to that landline telecom. They know exactly where that number is or where that phone is, sends the call through. Right? You make a call out to a cell phone. The cell phone provider says, "What? Hold on a second, we have to find them." Right? Ping cell phone towers, finds you, then it starts ringing your phone. Now, on the receiving end, you have no difference, right? Because you're just, oh, phone's ringing, and you pick up the call. But in terms of sending the call to you, right, that's where the difference comes in. That's why it will appear to take longer. Fax box. You can choose to have users have their own fax box if you want them to. You don't have to, right? But you would click enable, and then here you're given the option to use a spare number, buy a new number, or add an extension. My recommendation, if you're going to do this for an individual user, choose to have a phone number, right? If you select a phone number, either a spare number or buy a new one, that means this user can send and receive faxes. If you choose an extension number, they can only ever receive faxes. And potentially, you limit who they can receive faxes from, right? Like electronic fax services, at least the ones I've used so far, they don't give you the opportunity to add an extension number. They say you can give a phone number, and that's it. Even for analog fax machines, you have to have someone who knows how to handle sending faxes to an extension, right? Typically, right, some fax machines, you can add like comma, comma, and then the extension number, or pound, pound, right? There's some usually key combination they can add to the phone number. Otherwise, they have to listen in on the call, right? Wait for the greeting to play, and then they enter the extension number, and then they hit send fax. But once you select the phone number, you click on Save Changes, and now this user has their own phone number that goes right to a fax box, and then they get an email letting you know when they have the faxes. Conference Bridge. If you want this user to be able to host or moderate a conference, you enable that feature here. And then the only thing you need to do is set up a conference room PIN number. Now, this PIN number, the user can change on their own via the user portal. And then down here, you have the option to enable video conferencing. That's only going to be in-house use, right? So if you're only having conferences with your Dash staff members, right? So all people in your company, they will have video. But anyone calling from outside, right? So random phone number, they're not going to be able to make use of it. Call forwarding. You have your choice of off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own. At the very least, they can do it under the user portal. If they have VoIP phones, then they can also do it directly from their VoIP phone using feature codes. Failover mode is something you as an admin would have to set up for them. So you would click failover mode, you choose mobile or desktop phone, and then here you put the number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then you click on Save Changes. What failover mode means is if a call comes into a user and their VoIP phones are unregistered, right? Disconnected for whatever reasons, the system will automatically forward it to the phone number you just designated, right? So like their cell phone. Customize call recording. So here, when you first enable it, it will look like this, right? You need to tell the system what kind of calls to record. So inbound internal is a coworker call, right? So coworker Bob called Aaron. You can choose to record that. You can choose not to. Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron. Most people, if they're going to make use of call recording, would probably turn that on. Right? Outbound internal means Aaron called coworker Bob. And then outbound external means Aaron called customer Mary back. So we either see these two typically or all four. Whatever you decide to do, click on Save Changes. And now calls that come to this user on this page, right? So calls to their extension number or transfer to them will be recorded. Now, every account includes some level of storage as part of your monthly plan price. It's going to vary from plan to plan. And since, as I mentioned, we just have new plans, I don't know what those levels are. Do apologize for that. For more details, right? So if you just signed up today, then you want to check the pricing page. Otherwise, you're going to want to talk to our account services team so they can verify how much storage you have and what the overage is for that. Now, if you have heavy call volume and you're recording every call, you're probably going to want to look at AWS storage, right? Now, you'd want to talk to our account services team about enabling the AWS integration. It does require that you have an account with Amazon Web Services, right? AWS. You're linking your AWS account, with your Dash account, and you're putting your calls on AWS. At high volumes, that's going to be much more cost effective. Music on hold. If you choose to enable this, that means you're going to upload a hold music for this specific user, right? So they can have their individual hold music. Now, for instance, you would do this for like your sales team. would have one kind of hold music, right? Something probably telling you about special promotions, uh, of things of that nature. Whereas for say like your support team members, you'd have something hold music that would emphasize, hey, look at our FAQ page to find common solutions, or answers to common questions. But here you come to upload, browse your device, upload a .wav or .mp3 file that's under 1 MB, or up to 1 MB, I should say. And for space savings, you probably want to make sure it's in mono. A 1 MB MP3 is roughly 5 minutes. You click the up arrow icon and then click on Save Changes. Do not disturb. If you enable this, that means this user is not taking calls, right? So if someone dials Aaron's extension number directly, they go straight to voicemail, right? If Aaron's in a queue, he's going to be skipped in the queue, or he's not going to be offered calls from the queue, right? The queue may still offer him calls, but it'll show up as a missed call in the queue, but his phone won't actually ring. And same with groups, it would skip over him. Hot desking. This is a VoIP phone feature designed for a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling in mind. You create a hot desk ID. So like if you're making use of 4-digit extensions, I suggest making their hot desk ID their extension number. Up to you if you want to make them use a PIN number to log in, or you can leave that unchecked. So what happens? Aaron comes into the office on Tuesday. He sits down at desk number 2. He picks up the VoIP phone there. He hits *11 on the phone, click send. The system will then ask him for his hot desk ID number and PIN number if you required it. Right, when he does that, the system tells him that calls will now be sent to this device. So the rest of his workday, calls will be sent to him at desk number 2. The end of his workday, he picks up the phone again. He hits *12 to turn off hot desking on that phone. He goes home. Next time he rolls into the office is Friday. Angela's sitting at desk number 2. He says good morning, and then he moves over to desk number 5. Same thing, right? Picks up the phone, *11, hot desk ID. Now he's getting calls at desk number 5. All right, let's go over to groups. Groups are departments. Relatively simple routing options, but designed, again, to offer calls to multiple people. So up here at the top, you click on Add Group. You give it a name, right, and an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members who you want to be in the group. Then click on Create Groups. So once a group's created, you can click on the name here, right? So you can always change the name. And here you have got group call attempts. You've got little arrows here to the right, so you can increase or decrease it as necessary. Right? This is how many times the system will offer calls to your group team, or the members of your group. And then any changes you make, you click Save Changes. And down here to the bottom left is your option to delete the group if you no longer need it. Next, you click on the members box. Here you see how calls are being offered to your members. So in this setup here, I have what's called blast ringing or ring all, right? So I'm offering the call to everybody for the same amount of time. Now, one thing to keep in mind, calls from a group ignore the user feature follow me, right? So we have Aaron's in this group right off the bat. Aaron and Bob, okay. So if any of my staff members have multiple phones and under their follow me, right, I've enabled follow me for their users, for like Aaron, for example. Calls from their group ignore that completely. So all 3 of his phones will ring at the same time. Now, that's one way that he knows it's a group call versus a call coming to his extension number, but that can also be somewhat irritating for some people. Now, you have options up here along the top. You have these timestamps. The default for a new group is 120 seconds, right? I can edit that. Click Enter. So now it's 60 seconds instead. Right? Now, if I want calls to ring in an order, right, I click Distribute here. So now every time a call comes in, it's going to ring Bob first, right? Now, so call comes in, rings Bob. Bob picks up to start helping the customer. Now a second call comes in. When a call comes into a group, it doesn't skip anybody. right? And so basically, Bob's on a call, second call comes in, it tries to ring him. Now, if Bob has call waiting enabled on his device, he's going to hear that call waiting beep, right? If he doesn't, he won't know, right? But then after 11 seconds in this case, right, then the call gets offered to Aaron. So then Aaron picks up, right? So now we have Bob and Aaron both on calls. Third call comes in. Again, it's going to offer to Aaron, Bob, then Aaron, before it's going to be offered to me after 24 seconds, right? So now I made that third caller wait 24 seconds before someone could actually answer their question, right? And it's only going to get longer and longer. Now, these are sliders, so I can click and drag these to get some more overlap, so that way any additional callers won't have to wait as long to get someone to speak to, right? Or I could go back and, do the blast ringing, so that way whoever's answers the calls first picks up first, and handles the call. Now, I've mentioned the call center or the ACD queues, right? They're an advanced version of groups, right? So in a queue, for instance, the system knows when it keeps track of who's on a call. So it won't offer a call to someone who's already on a call in a queue. That's one of the primary advantages of a queue over a group. Now, queues or the call center, it's an upgrade off of existing plans. So you'd have to talk to our service team to verify the pricing on that. I have no idea what it is, to be honest. Queues also have things like different routing options, right? You can do round robin, which will equalize out over time, or most idle, i.e. whoever's been waiting the longest for a call gets the next call that comes in, that sort of thing. You have things like managers can eavesdrop in on a call, right? So they can listen in. They can also whisper to your staff member to give them help as they're on an active call, or even barge in and basically take over the call. There's also reporting tools that are built into the queues that groups just don't have. All right. Groups can have to have one extension number, but you can add multiple if you want to. In case you ever need to swap an extension number, what I recommend is click Add Extension, add the new extension number, then click on Save Changes, right? Then come back and then unassign the original extension number and then save changes. Groups can have their own phone numbers. You can have multiple, right? You can add from spare or buy new. And I guess I probably should have covered this under users, so I apologize for that. Adding from spare number is basically just reusing a phone number. All right, you just click on the selected phone number, click Add Selected. Now it's here, save changes. Right, buying numbers is adding a new number, right? So it's not already on the system. You have your options here for local or toll-free, right? Toll-free, choose your toll-free prefix. So for instance, 877, you click search. The system is going to give you a list of phone numbers that are available. Now, it's possible, even for the toll-free numbers, that the prefix is exhausted, doesn't have any. In this case, we're fine, there's plenty. You can scroll down to see more. You can add multiple phone numbers at once. Shows them up here in your cart. Now, at this point, the numbers aren't reserved, right? So if I get called into a meeting, right, my boss says, you have to be in here now, right? I'm like, okay, right? Jump into the meeting, and I'm not able to focus on this, right? It's a meeting that I have to have my complete attention to. I come back, and I try to hit buy. Let's say it's an hour later. I can get an error message because someone else could have bought these numbers while I was in my meeting, right? Because basically this list is what's referred to as a dynamic list, right? So you're competing with other people in real time. But once you select the numbers, you click buy, the system verifies that no one took the numbers while I was yapping at y'all. But then it says, okay, the numbers are here. It's going to activate them and then add them to this particular location. And I don't know why that's happening. And you see now I have the numbers here. And then I click Save Changes, and that adds them to this particular location. Right, this will be the same process on a user. Any place you have a phone number, right, you can click on the little gear icon here. That's where you would update the caller ID. Right, so you can update the outbound CNAM. You can turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM. Right, so that way the names show up on your staff members' phones. The E911, again, each phone number can have its own address for E911 purposes. which means you can then associate that phone number to the VoIP devices specifically for E911, right? So only for that purpose. And that allows you to have multiple addresses associated. You also have prepend, which is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to put additional text that shows up on the caller ID display of your staff members' VoIP phones. Right, gives them a heads up about what the call is going to be about. And then we can go ahead and unassign those. Group features, there's only a few of them. So ringback is the first one. It's sort of like hold music. Basically, call comes into a group, right? Rings out to your staff members, right? Their phones start to ring. That ringing sound is piped back to your inbound caller, and that's what they hear, ring back. Now, if you don't want that ringing sound to come back to your inbound callers, you can enable the ringback setting here and then upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded to mono, under 1 megabyte. So they hear that instead of that ringing sound. Click up arrow icon, click Save Changes. Or this pull down here would show your other media files that you already have on the account. Next action, to me, the most important group feature. When you enable it, right, by clicking up here, it's for this purpose. If no one answers, what do you want the system to do with the call? Right? Where are we forwarding it to? This pull down, basically, you can send it to another group, a specific user, a specific voicemail box. You can send it back to your main menu, right, for your open hours. Those are primarily what people send to. And then you will click on Save Changes. Allow call forward. If you enable this, that means your users can make use of call forwarding. Now, if you have people with multiple devices, you don't need to enable this feature, right? Because they're already getting wrong on 3, 2 or 5 devices, whatever they have, right? But if you have people, like if your system is set up with just 1 device per user, then you would want to make use of call forwarding, right? Because that means they're not at their normal device. And then we have caller ID prepend. When you click enable, you can choose to have either additional text or numbers show up as part of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. You want to use one or the other. You don't want to use both, generally speaking. I usually recommend using the text just because that tends to be a little bit clearer for people. Also, if you want to add additional numbers, well, it shows up on the VoIP phone, right, with an additional number in front of the caller ID. This, for some VoIP phones, when you try to call back that number, it adds that additional digit and then the call fails. All right, let's go back to main number. So for my 6 main numbers, once it shows up here, this page sometimes takes a while to load. I have not figured out why. I usually just chalk it up to myself being an impatient person. For some reason, it didn't load properly here. So let's try that again. Here we go. So main company numbers. All right, these are all my main company numbers. So anyone can dial any of these numbers. They're going to hear my main greeting, generally speaking, or wherever I choose to route it to. Down here at the bottom, this is where you add additional numbers, either making use of spare numbers or buying brand new numbers. If you don't want to use a number here any longer, you just click unassign in front of it. Right, and then you've got the little gear icon here to the right. So for caller ID, E911, and prepend. Then you have office hours strategy. You have your choice of 24-hour open office, i.e. you're open 24/7, or custom office hours. If you choose custom office hours for each day of the week that you're open, you want to click on the box in front of that day. And then in the boxes to the right, set your open hours in 24-hour or military time. These are pull downs, so you can see the other times that are available, or you can just type it in, whichever is faster for you. Down here at the bottom, if you want to have your system closed for lunch at the same time every day that you're open, put a check mark here and then enter your lunch hours again in that 24-hour military time. And then click on Save Changes. Now, again, this office hour strategy only for your main numbers and your auto attendant numbers if you have that, which we'll get to shortly. Office holidays. Put a check mark here if you're going to be closed for holidays. Over here towards the right, you have add holiday. You click here. You have your choice of single day, date range, or advanced. Clicking on any of those will create a new row. So here, right, you give it a name. So Memorial Day, for example. Then you choose the month and the date, and you click on Save Changes, right? New holiday added. Now, if I want to remove a holiday, I click on the little trash can icon here, and then to the far right, and then click on Save Changes. Right, date range, like I have here for Christmas holiday. Again, give it a name, start date, end date, Save Changes. As a precaution, because there's no year indicator for any holiday, but especially for the date range, we advise against having a date range that goes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. A long time ago, that posed a problem. I haven't seen it come up as a problem in 4 or 5 years, so not a huge deal. Advanced is like I have here for Thanksgiving, right? Gave it a name, choose the month, like November. In the middle pull down here, you have the options between 1st through 5th, as well as last. And then the third pull down, the day of the week, right? Thursday. And then Save Changes. Incoming call handling. So for my 5 main numbers, right? I unassigned one of them. How do I want my system to handle calls during my open hours, during my lunch hours, my after hours, and holidays? Now, if we go back to my office hours strategy, for instance, and I remove the lunch hours, and then we come back to incoming call handling, now I have the 3 tabs. Now, the first 3 options that show up will always be there, right? That 4th option at the end, that looks a little shorter than the others, that one only shows up in a couple of circumstances. One of those being if you have multiple auto attendants on your account, and you made one or more of those secondary attendants available in main menu. That's the most common reason that shows up. Another reason, if you worked with our services team and we created a custom call flow for you, right? There was a special setup involved, and that can show up here as well. Those are the most common that show up. So I'm going to concentrate on these first 3. So first, during my open hours, I have calls coming into my virtual receptionist. The virtual receptionist here is a link, and it comes up here. Oh, I got a little warning message that looks like my main greeting was removed, which is unfortunate. But here on the left-hand side, we have my main menu. This is where you set up the button options on people's phones, right? They can press 1 to go where? Where do you want it to go, right? That sort of thing. Now, here at the bottom, you have add route, right? When you click on add route, it gives you a new row. You have 0 through 9, the star key, and the default action. Right? Those are the menu options that you have available to you. This first pull down, you choose 0 through 9, star key, or the default action. Repeat here. And then the second pull down, you're saying, where do you want the call to go? Now, these places have to be already created to be available, which is why I started with users and groups, because those are the most common things people use for menu options. Right? But you scroll through, right? It'll default you to the Smart PBX directory, right? User directory, dial by name directory, whatever you want to call it. Then your users, right? So if you want menu option 0 to go to a specific person, this is where you would select it. Further down, we've got call queues. Again, if you're making use of the call queues or the call center, right? So like if you call VirtualPBX and you press option 2, that puts you into a call queue as you wait for one of our staff members to answer the call. Then you have groups, right? Again, the simpler version of departments. You can send calls to a specific device. So this is a specific phone. Now, not always recommended, because if that phone doesn't have built-in voicemail, then you might have a lot of missed calls on that particular phone. And we'll scroll down here. Right, then you got the specific voicemail boxes where people can leave a message. Media file, you can have a media, so press the menu option to have a media file play. You would typically use that for like hours of operation or directions. However, once the media file is done playing, the call ends. So not always recommended. And then the advanced call flows. This would be if you're making use of, you have multiple auto attendants and you're making use of submenuing, right? Press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish. You would have those options show up here and then create them or flesh them out under the auto attendants feature. Now over here to the right, you have your greeting options. Right? So first up is text to speech, right? You type in a greeting that you want the system to read off, right? It's a computerized or robotic voice. Text to speech greeting is limited to 250 characters. You can sometimes go over that, but 250 works consistently. It does not count spaces. So you get a little bit of leeway there. Now, when you use a text to speech greeting, right? You type it in, you click update, save, and save changes. The system names the file for you. In this case, main open hours menu TTS, right? Because we're in our main menu, we're doing my open hours, and it's a text to speech greeting. Right? So if I type in something here, oops, helps if I can actually type. Right? If I type something like this, then I click update and save changes. I call in, oh my Lord, I forgot option 3 and 4, right? So then I come back and type in again. So here, let's hit update. Save changes. Not sure what that error is. It's a little odd. But so you see here, the one I just typed in is saved. Now, if I edit this, it's going to create a second file called main open hours menu TTS. Normally not a big deal, but from any pull down option for the media files, for instance, I won't be able to tell one file from the other. So if you make use of text-to-speech greetings, over here on the left, there's a greetings tab. You'd want to find that main open hours menu TTS file, change the name, right, to something you'll recognize. You can upload your own file, right? Choose file, .mp3, .wav, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. Click update, save changes. Choose from an existing recording, right? So main hours open menu TTS. This pull down will show all your media files on the account. All right, so hold music files, voicemail greetings, main greetings. They'll all be here. So that's why you want to use names that you can recognize relatively easily. Recorded over the phone. The system wants you to use a phone registered to the account. This means a VoIP phone. If you want to use like a cell phone or a landline, for instance, then down here under settings, where it says allow outside recording, turn that on. Save changes. When you turn that on, basically this is a security feature, right? So that way some random person can't change your voicemail or your main greeting on you, right? But if you turn this on, now you're saying a cell phone or landline number can call in, and if they have the PIN number, they can change your main greeting. Now, if you just signed up with us and you called your main number, you'll get a message saying that the greeting for this menu has not been recorded yet. It will then prompt you to enter the PIN number. If you have a greeting in place, right, the main greeting will play when you call your main number. You can still enter that PIN number. The system will recognize it and then walk you through recording that greeting over the phone. Now, the system does not let you change or choose the file name for that recording. So if you're calling in after just having your account created, it will name it for you. Usually it's like your account number and has recording somewhere in the name of it. If you have a recording in place, all you're doing is overwriting the existing file. The file name stays the same. Professional recording services, when you click order here, it's going to open a new tab, take you to Snap Recordings. They're a separate company. Basically, we just have a partnership with them. Basically, you can order a greeting from them. They have many voice actors and actresses to choose from, different packages. They bill you via credit card, typically speaking. They send the file to you via email, and then you would come back here and upload your own file. All right, settings. Number of retries on misdial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. All right, so they get one attempt built in, but then in this box here, you're saying how many additional attempts do they get. Typically, anywhere from 1 to 3 is plenty, and that's what I see most of our customers make use of. Then dialing timeout is how much time the system waits after it hears a button press before it assumes you're done, right? So caller calls in and they press 8, right? So that's not a valid menu option. The system waits 5 seconds, says, oh, okay, they mean only 8. They're not like 810 or anything like that. So then, okay, not a valid menu option, not a valid extension number. With the retries, right, it says, oh, they get 1 retry. So now the main greeting plays a second time, gives that inbound caller a second attempt. Well, let's say they press 9 the second time. System still waits 5 seconds, waiting for additional button press, and then it says, oh, you're done. Now, after that second attempt, by default, the system will send the callers to the default action, in this case, the PBX directory. If I remove that, right, so I remove the default action, maybe. Okay, oh, there it goes. Right, if there's no default action after that last attempt, the system says, we did not recognize your entry, and then says goodbye and ends the call. Turn that off. All right, here, allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And basically, that just means if someone calls in, enters a valid extension number, transfers the call to that extension. If I turn that off, that means the inbound caller can only press these menu options. Anything else is an invalid entry. If I don't want that message of we did not recognize your entry, goodbye, if I don't want that to play, I can turn this on to suppress that message. Any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you click save here, and then you click save changes here, right? You're clicking save twice. Not sure what happened there. Well, unknown player does not help. I'll have to dig into that later. Right, after hours, in this case, I have calls coming into my front desk group. This is a pull down. Typically, it's usually offered to a group, a user, a queue, possibly a device. But basically, typically, by default, it's going to offer to 20 seconds, although it will follow like your group settings, what have you. If no one picks up, then it will go to the virtual receptionist. Because this is my after hours, I would probably have different menu options, and I would definitely have a different greeting play. Right? That's pretty straightforward. My holiday option here, I have calls. In this case, I have the pull down telling me, hey, skip to voicemail, and this going to this particular voicemail box. Again, this is a pull down. So I can select, again, a user group, a call queue, a device. I can have a media file play, etc. But after whatever I choose, then it's going to go to a specific voicemail box that I have set up already, and then save changes. Main conference number. Again, you can have multiple conference numbers. So here's your options to add from spare or buy new. You also have the option here for a custom greeting. You click enable. It's a text-to-speech greeting. So you just type in the greeting that you want the system to say. Click on save, and you're done. Now, you don't have to have a custom greeting, right? Because if you call in to this number, for instance, the system will welcome you to the conference and then ask you for the conference room number and then the PIN number. The main fax box number, you can only have the one number, which is why there's no option here for me to buy new or add spare. But I can click on edit fax box here. And here, inbound notification email. Right? I put in an email address. This email address, in this case Rose, she gets an email every time a fax comes in. Right? It's going to have the date, the time, phone numbers involved, and then a PDF attachment. Now, if someone dials my fax box number from, say, their cell phone, right? They hear fax tones, they hang up. Rose would get an email saying that there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Now, sometimes in the body of the email, it'll tell you the phone number and say wireless number. That's pretty much a dead giveaway that that was a misdial. But beyond that, especially if it's a phone number you're expecting a fax from, you'd want to contact the other party to find out what happened on their side. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. The email permissions, this is how you set up your outbound faxing permissions. This is designed with putting your email domain here in the box to the right. So by having at virtualpbx.com here, I'm saying anyone at VirtualPBX can send a fax out from this account, even if they're not a user on this account. Right? So they would create an email like they normally do from their virtualpbx.com email address, to field, right? They put the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number, and then they need the account realm for this account, and then they need to attach a PDF or TIFF file. Right? So the system looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachments. It doesn't look at the subject line. It doesn't look at the body of the email. So if you need to have if you want a fax cover sheet, you actually have to include that in your PDF or TIFF attachment. You can send one attachment per email. So you want to make sure you don't have any signature file attachments in the body of your email or in your attachment fields, excuse me. And then any changes here, you may click on Save Changes. Right. Auto attendance. This is a plan-specific feature, right? So available on some plans, not on others. This allows you to create secondary auto attendance. The use cases typically are for submenuing, right? That 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, or for separate businesses, right? So you have a separate business with its own phone number, its own greeting, but you can have staff members on from this, handling calls from all of your businesses. So up here at the top, you click on Add Attendant. You give it a name, and you give it an extension number. You click on Create Attendant. The extension number, basically only for internal use, right? Your customers will probably never know the extension numbers of an attendant. But for instance, if a call came in to me and someone is speaking in Spanish and obviously does not speak English, I could then transfer them to this extension number and get them sent to my Spanish-speaking auto attendant. Right? So that way they would get a greeting in Spanish, and then the menu options would go to my Spanish-speaking staff members. So once you create an attendant, you can click on the name, and by default, it looks like this, right? So it's unavailable in main menu. If I want to make this, and that means it's a separate, right? It's going to typically have its own phone number, its own greeting, right? For separate business, for example. If, on the other hand, I want to make it a submenu option, I would click on here, right, to make it available in main menu, and then save changes. If I need to remove an attendant, then down here, I can click on Delete Attendant. Auto attendants can have their own phone numbers, right? So you have the option here to buy new or buy numbers or add from spare. You got the little gear icon here, so you can update caller ID, E911, and prepend. Extension box, you can have multiple extensions on an auto attendant if you want to. Then on the wrench icon here under settings, this will expand out. Maybe. And you see here I have open hours, after hours, and holidays. This matches what we set up under my main number, right? So your auto attendants have to have the same hours of operation as your main system. But if you click on here, you only have the option also for routing calls to the virtual receptionist. So you set up menu options, your greetings, etc. And then you'll click on Save and Save Changes. All right, Devices tab shows the devices on your account. If a device is green, that means it's registered, so we can send calls to it. If it's red, it's not registered. Excuse me. And that means, like for a soft phone, someone's not logged in or it's not plugged in. For a physical phone, maybe there's a network issue, at this point we don't know. But basically we can't send calls to it. Now, up here at the top, you can always add devices here. The downside here is that for the soft phone, right, you still get that warning message, but you don't have that option to change the third party into VirtualPBX. Right, so you can only add a third-party soft phone here under the devices page. Beyond that, for physical phones, if you click on the little wrench icon here, actually for any, under advanced, the emergency caller ID, this you can do for any phone. You choose a phone number on the account, and then that will associate the E911 address to this phone. For physical phones, audio, you want to make sure that G711A and G711U are over here on the right under selected. This would also go for third-party soft phones that you have set up with to hardware, right? So you have a physical phone, but you weren't able to auto provision it, then you would use third-party soft phones to create it and then get it associated. For the VirtualPBX soft phone, you'd want Opus. Right? And by default, that's what should be there for the VirtualPBX soft phone. All right, Readings tab. This shows all your media files on the account. It has the name. The source is going to be like TTS for text-to-speech. Upload for uploading a file. And then recording if you recorded it over the phone. Here, you have the option to play it back, so you can listen to it right in your browser to see if it's still relevant. If for some reason that doesn't play, then you got the download option here, so you can download it right to your device and listen to it on your device's media player. Here, you have the edit icon, got the little wrench. You can click on that. So here, you can see the file name, right? So you can change it to something you would recognize. Here, you can delete it if you know you don't need it any longer. Otherwise, if you just change the name, click on Save Changes. Numbers tab, this takes you to your numbers in use. This just shows you where your numbers are assigned. Right? You can't unassign a number here. You can't assign a number here. You got the gear icon here for any of your numbers, so you can update caller ID, E911, or PPEND. If you go to spare numbers tab, this shows all the numbers you're not using. So, for instance, I have a lot of numbers. If I wanted to remove some to save money on my bill, I click on the little box in front of these numbers. And up here, now I have the option here to delete. I click delete numbers, continue, and now I have less numbers on my account. You also have the option here to click on port, which starts a new port request, right? So you give it a name, you choose local toll-free, and then it wants you to upload a PDF copy of your bill, right? So that should be the bill from your current carrier that has the phone number. After that, it's going to want like the address information. You'll have the opportunity to download a blank LOA and then upload a completed and signed LOA. The LOA does need to be signed, right? So typing or printing your name twice will cause a rejection and delay your port. Now, the signature can be a digital signature file, or you can print it out, sign it, scan it back in, and then upload it, whichever works best for you. The LOA should match the information your current carrier has on file, right? So whatever name for your organization, whatever address they have on file, that's what should be there. Generally speaking, toll-free numbers take about a week to port. Local numbers, they vary. I've seen some port in a single business day. Others take 2 to 3 weeks. Basically just depends on the other carrier involved. Now, if we get a rejection, we always double check to make sure there wasn't a typo on our side. We'll also, if there's multiple information, like if there's, let's say we have 2 different addresses for you, right? You have one address on your bill and a different address on the LOA. We try them both, right? To see if there's just a a communication fault there. But if that turns out that no matter what we do, we still get a rejection, we'll let you know. And the reasons that we were given, the reasons we were given aren't always very specific, right? Sometimes it's just simple address mismatch. Couldn't tell you what the correct one should be or what part was wrong. We just know the other carrier said this is wrong. At that point, basically you would want to contact your current carrier and see what's supposed to be the information that they're requiring to port out. All right. Voicemail boxes shows the voicemail boxes on your account. Right? Typically, in that third column, if there's an entry there, that means this is a user voicemail box that was created at the same time the user was created. Otherwise, one that either the system created or was manually created. So you see like this one here doesn't have a name associated with it. Up here at the top, that's how you create your own voicemail boxes. And you would create voicemail boxes, for instance, for your groups or for your call queues, right? So that way you're not relying on voicemails going to a particular person. So you give it a name, you give it a voicemail box number and a PIN number. Then you click on Create Voicemail Box. Once a voicemail box is created, click on the little wrench icon here. Go to Advanced, go to Media. Now here, under Media, you can choose a file that's already on your system, right? This would be the voicemail box greeting. You can also upload a file, .wave.mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Under the basic settings, this is what you would use to record a voicemail box greeting over the phone, right? You got the voicemail box number and the PIN number. You can call in and record it over the phone. Let's X that out. The temporary file, this is for the out of office or vacation message. So if you have someone out of office and you select a file here, this will play, right? It's going to supersede the media file until you put temporary back to none, then the media file will play. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have one recipient built in, right? The email address used for login. But for any voicemail box that you're creating manually, you'd want to click here where it says add new recipient and then enter their email address. If you only need to add the one, you click on Save Changes. Otherwise, you keep clicking Add to add more. And then under Advanced Options, so once you have a media file in place and you have a recipient in place, you put a check mark here in front of Already Set Up. Again, I would double check to make sure the attached email messages is enabled. And then up here, you have the option here if you want to delete messages after notification has been sent. And then click on Save Changes. The call logs basically shows your call history on your account. You have today, this week, and this month. Little green arrow to the right is a call coming into the system. You see this one was originated canceled. That means the inbound caller hung up, right? Whereas you see this one here has normal clearing. That means the call ended normally as far as the system is concerned. Let's see if we can get it. The little yellow arrow here to the left, that's an outbound call. Interesting. Oh, here we go. So here you see call came in and was offered to these different devices. Now this one here has a recovery on time or expire error. That, when we see that, that normally indicates a network issue of some sort with that device. Normally that means we'd have to go into like network troubleshooting to see what's going on. Lose race just means this device is not the one who picked up, right? Whereas down here, this is the device at the end here that did pick up. Normal clearing is what you want to see. Now the little fire hydrant icon here just lets you report the call. right? Basically, it creates an email for you that goes to support@virtualpbx.com, and it has the technical details of the call. Now, it doesn't give us any context. So in the body of that email, you're going to want to type in what happened or why you're reporting the call to us. That will help us identify what's going on. You also have a custom field here, so you can enter in your date range that you want to go by, and then you click on filter. Each of these tabs has a download option, which basically downloads the call log as a CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you'll be able to get more out of the call log information than you would just hear on this interface. The system will let you go back up to 12 months. If you need to go further than that, you would actually need to contact us. Our engineers can go back up to 18 months, but after that, the data is no longer available. Basically, it's gone. So if you need your call log data for compliance reasons of any sort, you definitely want to make sure you do this on a regular basis. Feature codes, I've already talked about a couple of these, but these are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. Now, this is a page under our support pages, so you don't have to log in every time to see it. There's also a page under support pages called the phone commands cheat sheet, which is just a single page PDF with this information, and it has a little contextual help here to give you a better idea how to make use of it. Again, this is basically, again, for VoIP phones. All right, next up, going here under the menu icon, blacklists. Blacklist allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you are blocking from receiving calls on your system, right? So you're not letting them through. Oops. You click Edit Blacklists. If you need to create one, you just click Add, right? You give it a name. You choose if you're blocking anonymous calls or not, right? That basically means if a call comes in and we don't see the caller ID, right, for whatever reasons it's hidden, and you turn this on, they get busy tone, right? They're not getting through, right? If you leave it off, that means those anonymous calls do come through. But beyond that, down here where it says list of existing numbers, you click Add Number, +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And you keep clicking Add until you're done adding numbers. Once you are done, you click on Save, and then you go back to Settings, and you make sure your list is over here on the right under Selected. Then you click Update. So now the phone numbers on these two lists are being blocked from each other's system, right? They get busy tone. You don't have to have a list for each phone number, right? You can have multiple phone numbers on a list. You can come back and edit an existing list to add more to that existing list as well. Faxes, this goes to your fax manager. You can choose the fax box on your account you want to look at. So you can see like the inbound fax history, right? So there's nothing here, but you would see like the date, the time, the phone numbers involved, the number of pages. You could then view the file or even download the file. Right, outbound fax tab, similar. You would see the inbound faxes. Again, you see the date, the time, phone numbers involved, number of pages. You can download the file. If you see an error, like a failure here, that means we had a system problem with the phone number that we're trying to reach out to, right? So that means it could have rang busy, right? Or we did connect initially, but then something interrupted the fax, right? i.e. someone picked up the handset on the other end. Right? Email to fax logs. This will show when the system had problem processing the initial request, right? So we never reached out to their phone number. If you click on the little eyeball icon here at the far end, under errors, you'll see here, no valid attachment. So likely this was no attachment was included, right? Normally, if it's the wrong kind of attachment, it will tell you the kind of document here. Again, .pdf or .tif. This one here was just the person wasn't on the account, right? So like someone used a personal email address versus the company email address. Number Manager, this takes you right back to your spare numbers page. Reports, this is a plan-specific feature. This will open up a new tab and take you to reports.virtualpbx.com. It actually does have its own login information. This allows you to create your own customized reports. Now, To see an example of this, if you go to our YouTube channel, do a search for advanced reporting demo, and you'll see some of the things that can be done. If this is not showing up as an option under your menu icon, you would need to talk to our account services team. It does require, again, it's a plan specific feature, so it might require a plan change or it might not have been turned on your account. So that's something that you would need to discuss with them. Voicemails. This takes you to your voicemail manager. This allows you to get to any voicemail box on your account as an admin. So you can see the messages they have, right? So if you need someone, if someone's voicemail box is full, you can go in and say, okay, messages from a couple months ago, I can delete, or even a few weeks. Also, as an admin, you have this option here, so you can move a message to a different voicemail box, or you change the status as necessary. Right? You see the date, the time, the phone number it came into. You can play it back. You can download it, etc. SMS registration. So this is if you want to make use of texting. This page has basically the information we have available. This is where you would start your registration. And here you would see the status of any phone numbers you've registered. Our services team is having a webinar about SMS registration on Thursday. I forget the time. I think it is going to be 10 a.m. Pacific time. But there should have been an email sent out to you, and there should be information on our webpage about that. Call center. This opens a new tab, takes you to callcenter.virtualpbx.com. Again, as I mentioned before, this is an add-on feature to existing plans. So it does have a price included. I don't know what that is. This has more advanced routing options than available in groups, right? Like round robin, most idle, etc. Also, one of the advantages of queues is your staff members can mark themselves away or even end their session, right? So that means they're not going to get offered calls. Whereas in a group, once they're added to the group, they're in, right? The only thing they can do is possibly turn on their D&D toggle at the top of the page, or if they're an admin, take themselves out of the group, right? But then you would, in either case, you want to make sure you adjust the routing so it still can ring through to other people. Dynamic caller ID, another plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change your outbound caller ID for your VoIP phone users. So if I go down here, to here, I called it 408 area code, and I chose a 669 phone number to use, right, which is an overlay for 408. And I simply said, hey, whenever my staff members dial a 408 number, change their outbound caller ID to this phone number that's on my account, right? And then I click on Save Changes. Right, so it's basically a way to have your calls appear to be local to wherever they're calling to. This other one here, I created a feature code. So gave it a name, chose this 323 phone number that's on my account, and then I created a feature code, right? Save changes. So now my staff members had to pick up their VoIP phone and dial *550, then the phone number, then the area code and phone number they're reaching out to. And when they do all of that, their outbound caller ID changes to this 323 phone number instead of my main number, or instead of their phone number on their user. Monitor, another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of all your staff. Doesn't matter what kind of phone they're using, right? You can say who's who's available, who's busy. You can also switch between staff members and the devices in question. Active inbound calls. Each call would have its own blue little box, and then show who they're speaking to. Right, parked calls. If there's any parked calls, it would show their parking spot number here as well. Recording Manager, this would open up a new tab, take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. That page does need your dash login information to log in, and that's where you would view your call recordings. You can play them back, you can download them, you can delete them as well. If you're making use of AWS storage, it would instead use basically show you the AWS information where you can play back the messages and download them. Although I think through AWS you cannot delete. You'd have to go in through AWS directly. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. This is programming. Basically allows you to link your Dash account to other software. So like you can link it to Zapier, for example. So you would create the hook here. and create webhook, and then go to wherever you're linking it to and associate it there. You'd actually need to speak to our sales team as they have more information about this. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code of what we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. Also, on our YouTube channel, there is an introduction to Zapier webinar, which will have some webhook information in there as well. And then lastly, the user portal. So every user has access to their own user portal. It defaults them to their voicemail tab, right? So this is where your staff members would listen to their voicemails, download them, or if they click on the box here, they can change the status. The call history tab, if I can click on it, right, shows a user's call history. They can change the date range, right? Again, they can go back up to 12 months to see the call history. It helps if I actually select the date range. But here you can see the call history. The fax tab only works for users that have their own fax box, but then they can see their fax history. The contact list shows their contacts within the account, right? So all the other Dash users, groups, auto attendants, etc. This is something a standard user cannot edit on their own, right? Admins are technically editing this whenever they're adding users or groups, etc., or removing them. But beyond that, it's not customizable. The conference tab here, this is for users with the conference bridge enabled. Over here on the right, this is where they can update their conference PIN numbers for themselves, for moderator, or for their participants under participant. They can choose that people join muted or deafened, or play entry and exit tones, right? Then they would click save. When they're in a conference, little plus icon here allows them to invite other Dash users to their conference. They can lock a conference so no one else can join, mute everybody, unmute everybody, or end the conference call. Also, while in a call, each moderator and participant has their own little box. So then a moderator can then mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And then the settings and devices tab right here. This is where your users enable call forwarding on their own. They put a little check mark here. They put in the phone number they're forwarding to, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and they click on Save Changes. And then they have you can see the status of their devices here. And that is everything. I do apologize, I ran a little long today. I'll try to get that shortened up for next time. We'll be here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, and thank you for your time today.